I'm Richard Piet. Thanks for joining us once again for the BC City Connection podcast. It's the official podcast from the city of Battle Creek, Michigan. You know, we have an airport here, the Battle Creek Executive Airport, and not only do we have an airport, it's 100 years old in 2024. Phil Kroll is here to talk about some of the special festivities and plans that are in the works for a celebration of the Centennial of the Battle Creek Executive Airport. Phil is the Aviation Director there. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. This is exciting. 100 years of the Battle Creek Airport. There is some history here, and when you hear the story, it fits right in with Battle Creek, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the airport was donated to the city. W.K. Kellogg purchased the land that the airport currently sits on, deeded it to the city, and the city has been owning and operating it for will be 100 years on September 23rd of this year. So we're very excited to celebrate that. And yeah, the airport has a very long history. It's deeply rooted with the success of Battle Creek, and we're very, very fortunate to have such a great asset here in the city.
What do we know about what W.K. Kellogg's intent was? Did he intend for this to be an airport, or did he just say, I'm going to buy some land and hand it over?
Yeah, so he was, I'm sure as you know, he was a very forward-thinking individual. He
Right.
knew he knew that aviation was an up-and-coming um, way to not only transport people but goods and materials. The mail service was just getting started. That was really the number one priority back in the early days of flight. So if you think back, the Wright brothers, their first flight was in 1903, and kind of ever since then, aviation quickly spread throughout the country, especially in the Midwest where the Wright brothers were from. So you would get a lot of barnstormers or folks coming to communities and kind of petitioning local governments to open airports or put land aside for runways, hangars, any kind of airport development. And there really was nothing close to the formal type of airport that we see nowadays. A lot of the time it was a field, plane would land just in the direction that the wind was blowing, and maybe a passenger or two would get out, or maybe someone carrying the mail would get out. And that was really it. It was a very dangerous kind of pioneering time. The Charles Lindberghs of the day would fly around the country and give speeches advocating for this. So yeah, W.K. Kellogg, again, very visionary individual, knew the importance of an airport, knew what an airport could bring to the city. And not only did he buy, a piece of land, he bought a very large piece of land. So the 1,300 acres that we currently sit on today boast a variety of tenants, and we're a very successful, thriving airport, and we're very happy that W.K. Kellogg was able to put this into the city and hand this over to the city, and we're very excited and fortunate that we're still utilizing it today.
Boy, it's interesting you bring all that up because I just came back from a trip to Roanoke, Virginia. And if you ever have a chance to go there, folks, check out the Virginia Transportation Museum, because there is a whole section about the mail service and airmail and how dangerous that was and how many postal workers were lost in the process of early flying. You brought that up, and it took me right back to what I just saw there. It really was, as you described, the very rudiments, the very beginnings of aviation. But you're right, Kellogg had a vision, and as a result of that, here we are 100 years later with the Battle Creek Executive Airport. How has the airport, if you might just highlight a little bit how we've grown? I mean, we know what it looks like now. We have a picture of what it looked like then, I suppose, based on your description. Bridge that for us a little.
Yeah, sure. So the airport's truly evolved. Like a lot of airports, again, it was really created more or less in the 20s. It grew kind of again with the, like you mentioned, kind of the advent of the airmail and the postal service really carrying out that service for most people that could afford it. But it was really World War II that the airport truly started to develop. So just like with any other building or industry, it's evolved. It hasn't looked the same throughout history. There used to be a runway when the Army was here. So before the Air Force, the Army was the branch of the government that flew the aircraft. So the Army Air Corps took over the airport. There was a north-south runway, a runway that ran east-west. So it was really as many runways as they could get in the direction of the wind. And after World War II, when the base was done as a training unit, the Air Force or Army gave it back to the city like they did with a majority of the bases that they had. And the city was able to use it in kind of a larger capacity than it had in the past. The Army had built some hangars and some buildings to support some of the training that they had. Some of that infrastructure is still around up in the north side by the Air National Guard. So the Air National Guard stayed as kind of a piece through the Cold War. The runway expanded to its current 10,000 feet that we have today. There was also an air traffic control tower and a terminal building that was built. Those buildings are also still around there on the east side off of Helmer Road there. Western Michigan University currently sits on that site, but the old terminal, some of your listeners might have actually flown out of Battle Creek. The air service was really in and out of there from the 50s till about the 80s, but you could actually catch a commercial flight there. Today, we don't have any commercial flights. You could still fly a private or an individual aircraft in and out of here. But a lot of the tenants that you see today, Western Michigan, Duncan Aviation, Waco, Centennial, the Air National Guard, the FAA, a lot of those came in the late 80s, early 90s, and began expanding their footprint or modernizing their buildings up until today, where we still see a lot of that growth. So it really it's changed a lot since W.K. Kellogg just purchased a field, an old farmer's field where planes could land, dedicated just for, again, aircraft to come and land. Then you started seeing some infrastructure development put in by the Army Air Corps. And then it really just took off literally from there when you saw a lot of the tenants that we see today with Duncan and Western and Waco and the International Guard. So it's evolved. It's going to continue to evolve, and we're very happy to help that growth and help bring in or retain as many tenants as we can at the airport. So it's very exciting.
You know, the word literally, some might say, gets overused these days, but you meant it. Literally took off.
Yeah,
It's true. You said 10,000 feet on the runway. Is that right? Did I hear
Yes,
that right?
10,004 feet, really, too.
10,004.
You
Okay.
got to keep that four in mind because it puts us just above some other airports that have just 10,000 feet. So I'd be remiss if I didn't include those 4 feet.
So 4 feet makes a difference.
It can, yes, it definitely can. It maybe doesn't necessarily make a difference for aircraft that are putting into their flight computers whether they need 10,000 feet or 10,004 feet. But in terms of sheer distance, it puts us ahead of Grand Rapids as the third longest runway in the state. So we're behind. Detroit Metro has the longest runways in the state over there on the east side. And then Oscoda actually has the second longest runway. They do a lot of cargo maintenance up there.
Yep.
And then we come in third, slightly ahead of Grand Rapids, who I believe is just at 10,000 feet. So it does make a difference in the technical measurements. So it's very nice to be a top three longest runway in the state.
Take that, Grand Rapids. Huh. 4 feet does make the difference. Nice. So how big a bird can we handle?
Really anything that's out there. So a lot of what you'll see at commercial airports that do have transcontinental aircraft that are flying to Europe or Asia or anywhere around the world, we could handle that. What we see today, for the most part, are some larger military aircraft that can come in here. We could handle the Air Force One or 747 type aircraft. that everyone's kind of familiar, possibly heard of. So we can definitely handle those. A lot of aircraft, what they use or what they calculate their takeoff and landing distances are based on the distance you have available, but also the width of the runway. So our air or our that runway, our primary runway is 150 feet wide. That's also important because really, if you're under 150 feet in width, the aircraft actually is too wide for you. So anything that's 150 feet or above and about 10,000 feet or longer can really handle any aircraft that's currently flying out there today.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Even though we don't see a 747 or Air Force One land here regularly, obviously it's, excuse the expression, on the radar as a place where a big plane like that could set down if it had to.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, this is now it's over 20 years ago, but during 9/11, the airspace all over the country, so the national airspace really shut down, and planes were just looking for anywhere to land. So airports like Battle Creek, there's famous pictures of sleepy towns with airports that just happened to have long runways that were filled to the brim because they were able to handle that. So Battle Creek's still a very important piece of the national airspace system, and we're happy to maintain and keep up really this again very valuable asset that not only the city has, but it's the region and the state as well. You look at us from either a civilian or a military side, and we've had conversations with both groups, and they love the fact that this airport has a 10,000-foot runway because it's not, again, a very common thing to have, even with commercial airports that might have larger aircraft. They might not have the room for it, or they might not have the operations to support that sort of infrastructure. So we're very fortunate to have it.
Hmm. I should remember this, but I'm afraid I don't. Did we have planes land here on 9/11 when the airspace was closed?
You know, I'd have to check into it. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if we didn't maybe have a couple. Just again because of the size, a lot of what you saw was aircraft again just going wherever they could because it was so sudden.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there was, back in that day there was still a pretty good sized military presence here too. So they had that going on. But yeah, I know even if you were just a normal guy flying around and you didn't plan on landing in Battle Creek, you had to land. So even if it
Sure.
wasn't a commercial aircraft, you might have seen some folks that weren't expecting to come to Battle Creek that were told just go there. So I'm assuming that's probably what they got. But yeah, it was definitely a rare instance, but something that Battle Creek would be prepared for in the future if we ever had to support something like that again.
Well, certainly nationally and probably globally, we heard about what you described, the smallest of planes, but also, like passenger jets that were full landing in places. And I think there was a story of a town in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, that the residents took people in their homes because they couldn't get home. The planes
Yeah.
had to
Yep.
land, and that's where they were. Well, this is really incredible history and really interesting to hear. Let's turn around and look the other way now. We have a 100th anniversary celebration that you're planning.
That's right. Yeah. So as a again as a great um, the great asset that the city has, we really wanted to look at the 100 years that we've been able to really contribute to the city and celebrate that and acknowledge again past and current tenants, folks that have played a key role in it, not just W.K. Kellogg and his vision, but everybody since then who's come through and helped and supported the airport. And yes, the airport on this September 21st, we're going to host it, even though the anniversary date is September 24th. The Western Michigan's College of Aviation will be hosting a fly-in pancake breakfast. We'll have some static displays, so folks will be able to come in. It's open to the public. We're probably going to open the doors either between 8:30 or 9 o'clock. We're going to iron out those details. We'll be open to the public. Folks can come in. They can look at some of the beautiful aircraft on the ramp. They can walk around a little bit. They'll see some of the tenants that we currently have there. They'll get a chance to sit down and listen to the impacts that the airport has, again, currently today and what it's had in the past. And then we'll be able to hear from some speakers. So we have a couple scheduled now. Hopefully, everything stays the same up until the date of the celebration. But it should be a nice all-day event. We're hoping to, again, just have the folks from the community come in. They can sit down to some breakfast. There's an opportunity to donate to a scholarship fund to help future young folks who want to get into aviation, either pilots or mechanics or folks in administration. So we're looking forward to not only hosting that, but kind of showcasing what the airport has done for the city, what it's currently doing, and then hopefully what it plans to do for the next 100 years.
And that scholarship would be the establishing of one, right? It's not there yet. So this is an occasion, this 100th anniversary, to try and do that.
That's right. Yeah. So the Battle Creek Executive Airport Centennial Legacy Scholarship Fund is a 501c3 through the Battle Creek Community Foundation. Like I said, they put this together over the last year and a half or so as this Centennial Committee sit down. A group of airport members, community members sat down, got the event together for the Centennial celebration, but also wanted something in perpetuity to help not only folks that are currently in aviation, but folks that want to break into aviation. It can be expensive at times for anything, especially for aviation, because you have to go through additional testing or maybe you have to go flying. So hopefully this scholarship, as it's starting to get funded, can help some of those individuals get a leg up or at least a toehold in the aviation world.
It was, at least in its early history, there was panache, right, with being able to fly as a passenger. But I think there's still that kind of calling involved with being a pilot. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I still think there's a lot of different types of pilots out there. You could be anything from cargo and agriculture. Nowadays, you see a lot of UAS or drone pilots even that can do a lot of that. But I still think, yes, there's still that, whether it's in the military or with commercial airlines, like a lot of us are used to seeing. Those are really the two big ones that we think of: the Tom Cruise Top Gun pilot, or the pilot that you see as you walk on and off your plane and you hear them over the PA. So those are the kind of folks in aviation that we associate, I think, the most with. And I still think, yeah, they do have a lot of that. You'll still see, fighter pilots wearing their flight suits and walking around, and they're kind of the rock stars of aviation, but they still carry a lot of legacy aviation with them. So the days of World War II or Vietnam or even, the Persian Gulf and more recent operations. So they still have a lot of character that they're bringing with them. A lot of, again, folks coming up to them. We just had the air show over the 4th of July weekend. A lot of folks coming up to them telling stories about how they maybe were former pilots or they knew of pilots when they were in the service. And then you kind of transition to, you walk through a terminal and you see a pilot and he's clean and he's neat and he's well kept and he's got his hat on and he's got his uniform on, and those guys look ready to go, and they're happy to see you when you get on the flight, and they're happy to see you when you get off, and they're willing to help you out. So yeah, I do. I think there's still that, you go back 100 years basically to when folks started transporting people and not just the mail. There was at first, yes, it was very chic. You showed up, you dressed in your best. A lot of flight attendants were actually airlines wanted them to be nurses because they weren't sure of some of the problems that could happen on flights. So they really kind of had to be kind of, not just serving the drinks and sitting down and getting napkins or food. They could be there to assist passengers as well. So there was this, again, this kind of event of going on a flight, and you would show up and could be some fanfare around it, and you could walk whoever it was that was going out of the plane up to the plane and say goodbye. Nowadays, there's obviously different barriers, and you really just drop people off at the curb and you pick them up at the curb, and that's it. It's kind of a business transaction. There's just certain steps everyone knows you have to take them. But I still think, yeah, there's a lot of elements of aviation that have stuck around for the better, and I'm sure we'll see those continue well into the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does feel a little bit different now, but it is a different world. Also, I talked about pilots, but there are certainly allied careers in aviation.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm a good example of that. I think a lot of people, again, just look at aviation as pilots first, then maybe they might go down a layer or two and see a few other things. There are so many careers that you could go into. Just at our airport alone, I can't even start to name off all of them, but they really boil down to, yes, the pilots. So you could say really the flight portion of it. So that would say pilots or flight attendants, folks in there. Then there's also the maintenance side, right? So you have the technical operations or the mechanics that are working on the aircraft, whether it's before, during, or after. Sometimes you might hear of, hey, there's a problem. We got to wait for the mechanic to come and fix it. They show up as fast as they can and do the best they can to fix it. So that's kind of another branch that folks could get into. They can maintain aircraft just like your car. It needs an oil change. It needs the tires changed. It needs the engines looked at and changed. So anything you can think of with your car, just put a lot more parts on the aircraft, and they have to look over all those. And then you kind of get into the I call it the administrative side, I guess, where you have folks like me. They're kind of, in charge of maintaining the airport. So you'll have an operations department and a maintenance department. They have to cut the grass and change the lights and fix the pavement and paint the markings. And then you have folks like me that are overseeing budgets and setting up meetings so that you can have events like an air show or a Centennial celebration. And then you've got other folks that are there too that are running businesses. So the College of Aviation is still a college, but there's a business portion to it. Duncan not only repairs aircraft, but they have a sales team. So there's aircraft sales that you could get into, or there's folks that are over there that are interior designers and they're just focusing on aircraft. You've got obviously the air traffic controllers who are kind of in their own world. They're still operators. They're not pilots, but they kind of have to understand what pilots are doing. They have to understand the layout of the airport. There's so many different fields in aviation, and we here at Battle Creek, we do our best to support it. We've got a wide array of folks here. So there's 11 individuals that work for the city that operate, maintain, and oversee the airport. And then there's all of the other people that work for their companies just at the airport. So we're a small, close-knit team. Everyone has a diverse background. We've got electricians, we've got administrative folks. We have mechanics that are out fixing trucks because we have to do snow removal and grass cutting and all these other different pieces. So there's a lot going on. There's several jobs. I've only hit on a couple of them, but yes, that's really kind of what you see in aviation, are really kind of three main types. There's obviously a military portion. You can go into a civilian portion. And I mean, there's truly thousands of different types of jobs in aviation. And a lot of people really, again, only know a couple or a handful. And there's so many that you could see at a commercial service airport or just a regular airport like we have here in Battle Creek that doesn't have commercial service, but it still has thousands of jobs, contributes, millions of dollars every year to the city of Battle Creek and to the region. So even though we don't have a United or an American or a Delta flying it out of here, the impact of the airport is truly massive.
Well, this was really interesting to hear about all of that and be reminded of the history of the Battle Creek Executive Airport here on the eve of its 100th anniversary. Be following the City of Battle Creek website and social media for more details as they become available associated with that September 21st 100th celebration and airport open house at the College of Aviation and Battle Creek Executive Airport. Phil Kroll, Aviation Director at the Battle Creek Executive Airport, here on the BC City Connection podcast. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Richard.